Although it was generally well received, Final Fantasy XVI gave its fair share of disappointment to long-term fans. With the switch to full action-based combat and a system centered around only using one character, I think it very much earned its divisive reputation. The game is the first in the mainline series to earn the M rating, and very early in the game, that serious tone is well established. But thanks to striking visuals, a great soundtrack, and some fantastic voice acting, you're treated to a cinematic adventure that I personally think, like many games in the series, will stand the test of time. However, our specific question today is not about the story standing the test of time. This is about the media that story is written on. Will you be able to pop in the disc and enjoy that down the road with no issue at all? Or is this a story that's better left to the digital world? Before we get into the game, let's take a look at the physical release. Now, this version we are looking at is the deluxe edition I bought from GameStop. As we open the outer box, you can see it comes with 3 items. You get a standard release of the game, a steelbook, and a cloth map of the world you'll be exploring. It's worth mentioning that the standard case has a reversible cover that I actually prefer, and it also has a not for resale barcode, which that's often in other games a good indication that a game came with a bundle or some kind of collector's edition. The standalone copy of Final Fantasy XVI just has a regular barcode. Behind the game you have a really nice cloth map that would be great for a frame or a display. And also, while this version comes with a steelbook with a spine logo, thankfully, keep in mind there is another steelbook that was given for pre-ordering specifically at Best Buy. The one I'm showing you is exclusive to the deluxe edition and the collector's edition. Now, let's go ahead and install the game and take a look at the software. As you can see, I've inserted the game and began installing. Now, keep in mind, I played this game the week it came out, and unfortunately, I was not doing this particular series on YouTube yet. So, for the sake of this video, I actually erased my save file and uninstalled the game completely. That way, when you view the video, you can see footage that's actually without the updates. With that being said, I did play it originally without any updates from start to finish, as I didn't even really connect the internet until a little bit into my New Game Plus. So, though it's going to say 56 hours on the install screen, there isn't any funny business going on, and I did actually play through the game completely offline. When we look at the game info, you can see this version is 1.0, and we are looking at about 90 gigabytes from disk. That's a fairly large install file, but I'm happy to say it is the full game, so there's no extra download required. Now, 2 DLCs have come out since release along with updates, so as of now, a complete edition would not be able to fit on one disc. They would have to print a version with an extra disc, and I gotta say, I would buy the game all over again to have that. So, here's to hoping, I guess. When you start a new game, you first have to arrange the settings. There is a handful of preferences like subtitles and where you want the graphics power to focus. You are then treated to a narrator setting the scene, and you're immediately thrown into a battle between 2 fire icons. After a short, intense intro battle, the camera pans to a man sitting around a campfire with some fellow soldiers. While watching a battle from afar, you find yourself running through chaos as giant monsters called icons battle in the skies above. Clive barely escapes being collateral damage, only to end up knocked unconscious in the fray. That's when you're taken 13 years into the past. There you are introduced to the Rossfields, and more specifically, a 15-year-old version of Clive Rossfield, the main protagonist of the game. After a combat tutorial and some other character introductions, Clive finds himself in the service of his kingdom as a new Shield of Rosaria. With impending war on the kingdom's doorstep, Clive is sent on a mission by his father to eradicate some goblins in a nearby abandoned village. He was told that after completing his quest, he was to meet at the sacred Phoenix Gate, and that's exactly what Clive does. It's there, at Phoenix Gate, where the story of Clive Rossfield truly begins to unfold. As you progress, the world begins to open from a fairly linear experience to a more semi-open world version. Fast travel is available from the start, and side quests become an interesting addition to an already well-crafted setting. Along those same lines, the game also gives you what's called a real-time lore tracker. At any point in the game, you can hold down the touchpad and relevant lore pops up for you to read. So if you don't understand something, there is a good chance the lore tracker can easily clear that up for you. I thought this was an incredible addition to the game, and honestly, I wish every game, RPG or not, had this exact same mechanic. Everything about the combat and boss battles are so grand and visually stunning in Final Fantasy XVI. While it's not the most challenging game, I think the visuals and smoothness of combat is enough to make up for that lack of difficulty or the tedious you may experience during the gameplay loop. I personally could not get enough of mixing and matching abilities until I found these combinations that allowed me to pull off insanely satisfying damage sequences. While it may be tedious for some to continually battle and hammer away at giant staggered enemies, I genuinely just didn't get tired of it. As far as level progression, they decided to go with an ability wheel that unlocks as you progress through the game. The story very directly ties to this wheel as well, and I appreciated that kind of thought. Stopping to fight when you find enemies in the world never hurts, as these points earned from combat become the currency to purchase or master new abilities. You can also reset the ability wheel at any time, and that makes it very easy to try out new combinations without the fear of an endless grind. There is also a specific section replayability portion to this game that I thought was a really nice touch. After completing sections of the game, you have the ability to play these levels over again by going to the Erich Stone in the hideaway. You have the option of stage replay, where you can keep your current power level and abilities and just enjoy the section again. Or you have the option to select arcade mode. That's my personal favorite. And there you can keep your abilities, but your level is scaled back down and you're awarded points for each section. If you die, you can continue the stage, but the earlier completed sections are reduced to 0 points. So if you want the top score, then you can't die. I think the biggest hindrance to the game, honestly, on the performance side of the console is really just the frames per second. There are times in the game where it can honestly get a little dizzying, and you'll see frame drops in towns, or you'll see animations smooth out as you approach enemies from a distance. It's fairly apparent that it doesn't run quite as well as some of the other games of the same generation. Now, me personally, I can play through that with no problem. I love vintage gaming, and frame drops are rarely enough to stop me from playing a game that I like. It would legitimately have to render the game completely unplayable to the point where I'm dying because of frame drops. So luckily, I don't think Final Fantasy XVI is quite that bad. If I get 60 FPS in a game, it's basically just a bonus feature at this point. It doesn't have to be a necessity for me personally, as much as I do like it. But I understand that that's not going to be the same for everybody, especially in modern gaming. With all that being said, I never had an issue with game crashes or sound issues or anything that made it unplayable on that front. So aside from those frame drops you're going to encounter pretty much for the entire game, I think this is a fairly well-constructed game on the performance side. I've played many games that are far worse with a lot more game crashes and glitches during the playthrough. So I'm okay with the FPS issue, but that might not be the case for everybody watching. As far as content goes, you are missing a pretty big chunk of content, as 2 DLCs have come out up to the making of this video. I have no idea if more content is on the way, but the only extra content that you're going to get on disc is the New Game Plus, which adds some additional weapons and some additional difficulty, and then you have the Erich Stone if you want to play arcade mode or stage replay. If I had encountered maybe more technical issues in my playthrough, or even just maybe one game crash, I probably would have given this game a lower grade. But the game only really has one obvious performance issue, and that's the FPS. Luckily for me, it's not nearly bad enough to ruin the experience. On the content side, missing those DLCs on disc is a bummer because it does add some actual story content to the game. So because of that, I'm going to have to give the Futureproof grade a B. I think for a AAA title, they did a good job of giving me a fully playable experience on disc, especially in the modern generation. And yeah, I wish the FPS performance was better, but if that's my only critique, I'd say it's no different than playing many of the PS1 games now. And if I would consider those games future-proof, I think I have to consider Final Fantasy XVI future-proof as well. So thank you everyone so much for watching. Please subscribe if you enjoy the content, and leave me suggestions in the comments of games you'd like to see me cover in the future. If you'd like, join my PlayStation 5 Collectors of America group on Facebook and check out the other content on the channel. As always, I will see you in the future.